Throughout history, there have always been courageous individuals who dared to live their truth, challenge the status quo, and fight for a more inclusive world. These LGBTQ+ trailblazers didn't just break barriers, they built bridges. From the silent strength of writers who coded their love into poetry, to activists on the front lines of protests, to artists, scientists, politicians, and performers who redefined what visibility and pride mean, these icons shaped not just LGBTQ+ history, but the world's history. In this video, we're shining a light on those who refuse to be erased. Whether it was Marsha P. Johnson throwing the first brick at Stonewall, Harvey Milk becoming one of the first openly gay elected officials, or Billie Jean King smashing tennis records and stereotypes, each of these figures left a legacy of resilience, power, and hope. But beyond the headlines and history books, their personal struggles and triumphs are deeply human stories of love, loss, identity, and the fight for dignity. So, why does this matter today? Because representation saves lives. Knowing who came before us gives strength to those navigating their journey now. These trailblazers made it possible for people to live authentically, to love freely, and to demand justice without apology. And yet, many of their names remain overlooked or forgotten, especially trans and queer people of color who laid the foundation of LGBTQ+ liberation. It's time to give them the recognition they deserve. Get ready to discover, or rediscover, the stories of LGBTQ+ icons who transformed silence into voice, fear into defiance, and oppression into revolution. Their lives weren't easy, but their courage still echoes across generations. Let's dive into their remarkable legacies. Visibility and representation matter, the power of LGBTQ+ icons. In a world that once demanded silence from anyone who dared to be different, visibility became a radical act. For the LGBTQ+ community, being seen and heard has never been just about attention, it's about survival, truth, and the power to exist without apology. Icons like Marsha P. Johnson, Harvey Milk, Ellen DeGeneres, Laverne Cox, and so many others didn't just rise to fame, they shattered ceilings, rewrote narratives, and created space where there once was none. Their courage to live authentically in the public eye sparked revolutions that continue to echo across generations. When these trailblazers stepped into the spotlight, they weren't just representing themselves, they became living proof that queer people exist, thrive, and matter. Their stories directly challenged the stereotypes that had long dehumanized LGBTQ+ individuals. They replaced shame with pride, fear with strength, and invisibility with undeniable presence. Every interview, every performance, every protest, was a step forward not just for them, but for millions watching who finally saw a piece of themselves reflected back. Representation doesn't just influence how others see us, it reshapes how we see ourselves. For a young trans teen watching Laverne Cox on screen, or a closeted student hearing Lil Nas X own his identity with bold confidence, something deep shifts. The message is clear: you are not alone. You are possible. That kind of affirmation can be life-saving. It's a reminder that authenticity is not only allowed, it's celebrated. And it's not just about celebrities. Visibility matters in classrooms, in politics, in sports, in everyday life. Every LGBTQ+ teacher, doctor, artist, or activist who chooses to live openly is part of this powerful wave of change. They make the world safer for those who come after them. They normalize what once was hidden, and in doing so, they dismantle the silence that once smothered entire identities. But visibility comes with risks, and these icons knew it. They faced backlash, threats, and isolation. Still, they pushed forward, fueled by something bigger than themselves. Their bravery lit the way for others to walk more freely, more safely. And every step forward they've taken has made the road a little less lonely for the next person. So when we say visibility and representation matter, It's not just a slogan. It's a lifeline. It's about creating a world where being LGBTQ+ isn't a secret or a struggle. It's simply another beautiful way to be human. Intersectionality in activism. When we talk about activism, it's often easy to focus on a single issue, whether that's LGBTQ+ rights, racial justice, or gender equality. But for many trailblazers, the reality has always been far more complex. Activists like Marsha P, Johnson and Sylvia Rivera didn't just fight for one cause. They existed at the crossroads of race, gender identity, class, and sexuality, and their activism reflected that. This intersection of identities is what we call intersectionality, and it's essential to understanding the full picture of the struggle for equality. Marsha P. Johnson, a black transgender woman and drag queen, became a prominent figure in the early LGBTQ+ rights movement. Alongside her, Sylvia Rivera, a Latina trans woman, stood shoulder to shoulder in the fight, not only for gay liberation but for those in the community who were often left behind. These women weren't just resisting homophobia. They were also challenging racism, transphobia, poverty, and police brutality. They understood that true liberation could not happen for one group if others were still oppressed. Their work during and after the Stonewall riots of 1969 helped shape the early days of LGBTQ+ activism in the U.S. But even within those movements, they faced exclusion. Mainstream gay rights organizations often pushed trans people and people of color to the margins, focusing instead on the more palatable image of white, cisgender gay men. Johnson and Rivera refused to be sidelined. In 1970, they co-founded STAR, Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries, which provided housing and support for homeless trans youth and sex workers, many of whom had nowhere else to go. They were practicing intersectional activism before the term even existed. Intersectionality reminds us that a one-size-fits-all approach to justice isn't enough. A black trans woman faces challenges that are unique to the intersection of her identities, challenges that differ from those of a white gay man or a cisgender lesbian. Recognizing these layered experiences allows activists to build movements that are more inclusive, more compassionate, and ultimately, more powerful. Today, we owe a deep debt to figures like Marsha and Sylvia. Their lives remind us that the fight for equality must include everyone, especially those most vulnerable. Because when we uplift those at the margins, we build a world where liberation isn't selective, it's shared. Courage against all odds. Throughout history, real change has never been born out of comfort. It has always come from the bold, the ones who stood tall when everyone else looked away. The ones who faced down the storm, not because they wanted to be heroes, but because silence was no longer an option. This is the story of courage against all odds, a tribute to individuals who dared to live their truth in a world that punished them for it. Imagine waking up each day knowing your identity could get you fired, imprisoned, attacked, or even killed. For many LGBTQ+ pioneers, this wasn't imagination, it was reality. They faced legal persecution under discriminatory laws, were shunned by their families and communities, and were often forced into hiding. And yet, despite this, they chose to speak out, to organize, to protest, and to love, openly, defiantly, and bravely. Take Marsha P. Johnson, for example, one of the central figures in the Stonewall Uprising of 1969. A black transgender woman, Marsha was not just fighting for her own rights but for an entire community abandoned by the system. She had no wealth, no powerful platform, just a deep belief that everyone deserved dignity. And from that belief, a revolution was born. Or consider Harvey Milk, the first openly gay man elected to public office in California. He knew his very presence made people uncomfortable, but he also knew that visibility saves lives. He ran for office not once, not twice, but 3 times before finally winning a seat on the San Francisco Board of Supervisors. His courage cost him his life. He was assassinated in 1978, but his legacy lit a path for generations to follow. And these stories aren't just from history. Even today, LGBTQ+ activists in many parts of the world face imprisonment, exile, or worse for simply existing. But still, they resist. From the streets of Kampala to the courtrooms of Warsaw, from pride parades in Mumbai to underground support networks in Tehran, the spirit of courage lives on. What unites these heroes is not power or fame, but raw, personal bravery. The kind that whispers, "Do it anyway," when the world screams, "Don't." It's a reminder that true change doesn't always start in government halls or global headlines. It often begins with one person saying, "I will not hide who I am." So, the next time you feel overwhelmed or powerless, remember this: history bends toward justice because of people who were brave enough to push it. Real change always starts with courage, especially when it's hardest to find. Legacy of cultural and political change: LGBTQ+ icons who changed the world. Throughout history, LGBTQ+ icons have not only broken barriers, they've built new paths for generations to come. Their influence reaches far beyond identity or activism. These trailblazers reshaped the very fabric of our culture, politics, and collective consciousness. From city halls to concert halls, from tennis courts to poetry books, they didn't just change rules, they changed hearts. Take Harvey Milk, for example. As one of the first openly gay elected officials in the United States, his political presence in San Francisco wasn't just symbolic, it was revolutionary. Milk's work for LGBTQ+ rights helped spark a nationwide conversation on visibility and equality. Even after his tragic assassination in 1978, his legacy lives on in every Pride March, in every young person who dares to run for office as their true self. Milk proved that politics could be personal and powerful. In the world of literature and social thought, Audre Lorde's voice roared with unapologetic brilliance. As a Black lesbian feminist and poet, she called out racism, sexism, and homophobia, often all at once. Her writing wasn't meant to soothe, but to stir. Lorde gave voice to those too often silenced, forcing society to confront its discomfort with intersectionality. Her work laid the foundation for much of today's discourse on gender, race, and identity. And then there's Freddie Mercury, an icon whose legacy continues to echo across generations. As the flamboyant and fiercely talented frontman of Queen, Mercury redefined what it meant to be a rock star. His larger-than-life performances, bold fashion, and unforgettable voice made him a global phenomenon. Behind the glitter, Mercury also struggled with stigma around his sexuality and later, his AIDS diagnosis. But even in the face of adversity, his music uplifted millions, and still does. In sports, Billie Jean King smashed more than tennis records. She shattered glass ceilings. A fierce advocate for gender equality and LGBTQ+ rights, King used her fame to demand change. Her iconic Battle of the Sexes match in 1973 wasn't just about winning, it was about proving that women, and queer athletes, deserved a place at the table. Her activism continues today, reminding us that sport is not separate from society, it reflects and shapes it. These icons didn't just succeed in their fields. They challenged the status quo, shifted public opinion, and expanded what was possible. Their legacies are not frozen in the past, they are alive in every artist, athlete, thinker, and leader who dares to live and speak their truth. Inspiration for the present and future, honoring LGBTQ+ trailblazers. In a world still grappling with prejudice and inequality, remembering those who came before us is more than a tribute, it's a call to action. The pioneers of the LGBTQ+ movement didn't just fight for rights, they dared to live authentically in times that punished visibility. Their courage carved the path we now walk, and their legacy offers strength to those still discovering their voice. Figures like Marsha P. Johnson, Harvey Milk, Sylvia Rivera, Audre Lorde, and countless unnamed activists didn't just survive, they created space. They stood in protest, spoke in poetry, marched in defiance, and loved openly when it was dangerous to do so. Honoring them today is more than remembrance. It's empowerment. It's saying, your bravery wasn't in vain. When queer youth learn these stories, they don't just find history, they find hope. They realize that identity is not a weakness but a form of power. Every pride flag raised, every story shared, every step out of the closet echoes with the strength of those who made the first moves. These stories are not relics. They are roadmaps. For today's activists, these legacies are a reminder that change is often slow, but always possible. That one voice can spark a movement. That protests, art, education, and even small acts of defiance can shift the world. The work is not done. Trans rights are still under attack. Queer youth still face bullying, rejection, and violence. But the resilience of those who came before us proves that the human spirit, when ignited by truth, cannot be silenced. So as we honor these pioneers, let us carry their fire into our own actions. Whether it's advocating for inclusive policies, supporting LGBTQ+ students, creating safe spaces, or simply choosing to live openly and proudly, we are continuing the movement they began. We are not just standing on their shoulders, we are marching beside their spirits. Every act of pride is an act of resistance. Every authentic life is a beacon for someone still searching. And every time we speak up, show up, or simply exist as we are writing the next chapter of this story. A story of justice, love, and unapologetic truth. So to the past, we say thank you. To the present, we say keep going. And to the future, we say, you are not alone. You are the reason we fight. And you are the next hero waiting to rise. The stories we've explored today are more than just chapters in history. They are ongoing legacies that live on in every Pride March, in every person who dares to come out, and in every law that brings us closer to equality. These LGBTQ+ icons didn't just survive, they thrived, even when the world told them they didn't belong. They taught us that change is possible, but never easy, and always worth fighting for. As we reflect on their impact, let it remind us that visibility is power, and remembering our past is an act of resistance. Whether you're part of the LGBTQ+ community or an ally, we all have a role to play in shaping a more inclusive future. If you found this video inspiring, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear these stories. Drop a comment below telling us which LGBTQ+ icon inspires you the most, or someone you think the world should know about. Until next time, stay proud, stay loud, and never stop celebrating who you are.